everyone is kind of like, everyone's pretending to be normal, and they're really ashamed of themselves, or ashamed of the thing that is actually special about themselves. And I really don't like that. It's true. And I think that's true for me, and like, it's true for me internally, and it's true. So I just as much as I want myself to, express myself and to not think about what other people are thinking and do that, I want that for other people as well. But like, to think about like, whether it's success, fame, money, like, I think a lot of people are actually like, being famous doesn't seem fun. Yeah,
it doesn't. Right.
Also having the pressures of being an artist, and sort of having to conform to what people expect of you. When you're, I even see it with like some relatively famous artists, where it's like, people only they know you for like whatever you're like. If you're drawing and you're drawing like faces in a certain way, it's like, and that's what they want you to do, and to have to like deal with that and conform to that, that doesn't seem that fun. Seems either. Yeah. So I think my ideal is like being able to follow my interests and my passions, and then being able to like have food on the table, and that's it.
3, 2, 1. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Jeoffrey Sarpong podcast. Today I'm here with Mateo. Mateo, how are you?
I am good.
It's very, very good to see you. It's very, very good to be here. First of all, I'd like to just give the audience a little background of how we know each other. Mm-hmm. So if you want to just give a small summary of how we met and how we know each other and how we even got here in the first place.
Yeah. So we met at a open mic poetry event. I sat down, and then you were next to me. I still had to finish writing some stuff that I was going to perform,
which was really impressive.
No, I was transcribing it. It's not.
It was really impressive. No, it's like not. Bars before.
People were like, came up to me and they were like, "Oh, were you writing what you said like just before?" And I was like, "No, I had it in one notebook, and then I wanted to copy it down to the other one." That's all that was.
But you didn't change it. You didn't change anything, or you must have changed, like tweaked it a little bit.
I don't know if I did.
Either way, it was impressive. That's why I thought
maybe I'll just pretend. I'll keep doing that everywhere I go, so that people think
that you wrote it
impressive.
Just before you did.
And then we both performed. That I really enjoyed. You did three poems.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed all of them. Especially the third one, because, like we spoke about after, it was one that you'd performed before. So you were not just reading it, you were performing it, and you kind of had that down. And then we walked back to the tube together, and we just chatted along.
Yeah.
And then I think shortly after I started putting my poetry on an Instagram page, and I sent it to you, and you're probably like, I love getting messages from you, because you're like, you'll be like, "Oh, this is sick."
Literally.
Like, this one's that. So I'm just like, I super appreciate every message.
Dude, like when you sent me that poetry and I checked it out and I saw it and I saw the ones you posted before and I was reading and I was like, holy shit, this is really good. This is like, and that was my legit reaction. I was like, dude, this is so sick. I'm so glad that you started posting it. And I would post it to my story. I was like, guys, look, go check him out. He's fucking cool. But no, 100%. And then like, from then on, I was like, yeah, I gotta have you on a podcast, because like I love having poets on a podcast. I love talking to poets because obviously I'm also a poet myself, and it's like to find someone who looks at the world in that way is unique. And so I was like, yeah, I gotta have you on a podcast. And so obviously after that also I was like, dude, we gotta set this up. So I'm so glad that we're here. I'm so glad that we're doing this. Thank you so much. And so like, okay, so the reason I wanted to get to speak to you today essentially was to obviously talk about poetry, but also on the wider lens, talk about creativity. And then you told me about a book, The Artist's Way. So before we start, actually, can you talk about The Artist's Way?
Yeah.
Where you heard about that book, what that book means to you.
Yeah.
A little bit of summary about what the book is about.
Yeah, I think The Artist's Way, like, if you want to know what I think, basically, like, go to that book, because that's what I do when I need to figure something out. I just go to that book. That book, I started doing it. So it's a very practically minded book. It's set up in like, it's like a 3-month program where it's like structured like week 1, week 2, week 3. I didn't do it like that. I kind of did it at my own speed. And I'm still doing it really. But how I heard about it was I was at a meditation retreat. And that was about a year and a little bit ago. And at that time I was working at a startup. I think I had the sense that I wanted to do more creative stuff, but very vague sense. And I really connected with one person there at the retreat. Like we really got along. And she was telling me about this book. And then I remember we had a conversation about it. She was like, yeah, you have to check it out. You really have to check it out. And I remember I was like shortly after that afternoon, I'd probably forgotten all about that conversation and about the book. And then she like came over and dropped it like on me. And I remember when she did, I look back on it now and I'm like, it was like, like this holy book that was like being given into my hands. And ever since then, one of the key parts of the book is that you basically write morning pages, which is writing every morning, stream of consciousness, whatever. I've basically been doing that for the past like year and something.
What was that like then? To get into it, what was that like to go from not doing that, not getting up every morning and writing, to actually having to get up? And was it difficult at the beginning to write stream of consciousness for, I'm guessing there's a certain number of pages you have to do it for? Yeah. And then did it get easier over time?
I think it goes in waves. I think I had a easier time of it than a lot of people. I think different people have different reactions to it. I think some people find it really difficult. And actually, one person that I work with, she started doing the morning pages because and she started reading the book, and she has a really hard time with it. I think for me, because it's like something I needed to do, I always feel better after doing it. So that's one thing that's like, I rarely miss a day. And even if I like, if I have to write a few less pages, then in the evening I'll like write the rest. Like I really try and be structured about that, because I can just tell it helps. It helps.
Yeah. No, I can see that. I remember I used to do something similar, but it was more like a journaling, so I used to journal like every day, and I did it for like 6 months, and it was like the best thing I ever did. Like get up in the morning. So what I used to do one thing. I used to do what I'm grateful for in the morning.
Yep.
First of all, stream of consciousness, and then what was I grateful for?
Yep.
And then in the evening, what I had learned throughout that day. So like that book, and then doing that, like in the morning, also thinking about it, and then in the evening, kind of like coming back around and thinking that was super helpful. Kind of keep my mind structured.
Yes.
Then I could go back and read and like see like what I had written previously, and like how I was changing throughout that time. So that was super cool.
It is cool. To like be able to go back on it. And I think one of the things that you're saying is like, I think writing every day gives you a continuity in the sense that I think before writing, I think, or writing every day, or just, I guess, being more mindful of what's going on in your life and in your thought process, is you wake up, you like probably think, you go throughout your day, and then you probably have like the same frustrations or the same desires every day, but then life kind of gets in the way and you just forget about that.
100%.
And then you just keep doing that.
Yeah,
all the
literally,
time.
yeah. Continuous loop of repeating the same habits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think because you're forcing yourself to write it every day, you kind of, you will inevitably be like, well, I've been complaining about this thing for like a week. I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah.
Or I've been saying I want to do this. Like,
I'm going to actually do it.
yeah, it's like a form of, it's just self-expression, and it helps you get to dig deeper and get to know yourself and what you want, what you don't want, what you think about things.
And on that topic, actually, one of the big things that I wanted to talk about today was creativity, but also the different forms of creativity. So we both, as we mentioned before, do poetry. So I wanted to ask you, what was your poetry journey? So what was that kind of self-expression? Where did that come from? And what's the journey been from when you first started doing it, or hearing about it, start performing, or even practicing it, to where you are today? And then once you go, I also want to speak about it.
Nothing is like, I literally started writing poetry like a month or two ago.
Bro, that's incredible. Like, honestly, like, that's, you don't understand how surprising that is to hear. From you writing it, even thinking about writing it, to go in this level of depth, or like expression and vulnerability. Yeah. Because sometimes that takes so long. So for example, for me, right, I started thinking about poetry years ago. So I used to know this girl. I used to date this girl, and she would write poetry. And so for the first time in my life, she would like read her poetry to me, and it was super vulnerable.
That's beautiful.
She was super vulnerable and like super. And then we would talk about it afterwards, and I was like, she was like, you sound like you could do poetry too. And I was like, what are you talking about? I can't do poetry. I was like this guy who played football and like was like sporty, and like I like reading. We had that in common, but I like to poetry to see what she was doing, being that vulnerable. I thought I could never do it, but then she like kept encouraging me, so I did it, and I started it, and then I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the process. I fell in love with like just the art of expressing yourself to this like this way of self-expression, you know, to look at yourself in a different lens almost, you know, to kind of like, and I found I was very good at it. I'm very good at expressing that. I'm not sure how good I am at that actual quality of it, but I'm good at expressing those emotions. Yeah. And over time, that's when I started to share with other people, because initially it was just something I would write for myself and maybe share with her, but like never would I share with other people. But then breaking through that barrier of sharing with other people, I think that kind of like helped me grow as a person. Yeah. Because it made me discover who I was, you know. Like maybe you're like on the fence about your identity, who you are and what you mean, what you want from the world. But then when you start writing poetry and you kind of see yourself in this lens, you kind of see as, oh, okay, cool, this is exactly, these are my thoughts, so these are my feelings, these are who my aspirations, my fears, all of these things, right? Yeah. And so like it puts down a page for you so you can discover who you are. And so that's what, I guess that's why I'm wondering too, is like, did that help you, even though you've been doing it for only a month, in that space of time, has writing poetry kind of helped you discover who you are, like different parts of you?
It definitely helps me. It helps me put words to things that, and moments that are special to me, and it helps like encapsulate a feeling or a moment. Yeah, you can kind of, I remember I saw someone talk about it where they're like, oh, it was a poet, or Rupi Kaur, actually, who my flatmate really likes. And she was saying that like she can feel when a like poem is like bubbling up, and then it's just like she just goes to it. And I think that's true for all types of expression. It's like you can just feel it like bubbling. Sometimes you have to, you know, go and do it, and then it's like you're not just waiting all the time. Yeah. But you're like creating conditions for it. So poetry helps me encapsulate special moments, and I think definitely that's.
Do you remember your first poem? Do you remember the first time you sat down and then had that feeling and actually? Because I remember mine, right? Like I remember my first poem. It was like, funnily enough, it was like a long poem.
Yeah.
Like, do you know the one I performed, the last one?
Yeah.
That was my first proper poem.
Oh shit.
That ever like.
That you wrote.
Yeah, because it took me months because I would write a piece of it.
Yeah.
Like I'd write from one perspective as one ghost or whatever, and look at it from a different perspective. Or just basically me writing different poems over like 6 months, and then it was like, oh, okay, cool. Like this actually can be performed in one.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that was kind of like, it was like a continual process.
There were 6 separate poems, and then you joined them into one.
There were 3.
Okay.
So like there were 3 ghosts. So it was like basically like one perspective looking at me, like, because I was just basically thinking about all the gifts that I thought I had, especially at that age, that I wasn't kind of using to the fullest. And I was like, imagine these gifts came back and looked at me and was like, man, you've let us down. And like what they would say, essentially what I would say to myself.
Yeah.
And so I was speaking to myself and using this as a way, as a vehicle to kind of talk to myself about like the things that I knew that I could be doing more. Yeah. And then the idea of them being a ghost talking to me when I was like on my deathbed came at the end. Where I was like, okay, cool. Actually, that's actually even more interesting perspective to put them all in together and like have those different conversations. But like that was, to me, that first process was difficult because I was like, okay, what do I want to say? Like I wanted to write, but what do I want to say? And so like getting through that and then looking at, I think it came as an introspective kind of like a poem, because I think that's what I get from poetry, is that introspective like channel. Yeah. So that's what I had to learn from my first poem. Do you remember what made you write your first poem, or like what made you?
I have no idea.
Really?
That's the nice thing about like this, like going back to like the morning pages, is because you're not sitting down or saying like, oh, I'm gonna write this poem or this whatever. It's like you're creating literally a blank page, and then whatever comes out. And like I was explaining to you earlier, I think in the last months I've been reading more poetry, and just in my personal time, and it's been helping me a lot. And through that, then that's what I've been writing. Like that's what's come out when I write these pages. But yeah, it wasn't planned.
What other? Because I'm thinking too, because you mentioned poetry, but we've talked about other creative pursuits that you do. If not poetry, maybe it is poetry. But what's your most comfortable way of self-expression? Let's say, is it stand-up? Is it poetry? Is it something else that we haven't spoken about?
I think I'm figuring that out, and I don't think that I'll ever necessarily have like one.
Especially, yeah,
because it's just different. They're different things. Like, yeah, they're I think they're different things. So I'm very much, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like making up for a lot of lost time where I wasn't doing a lot of creative stuff for a long time.
Same.
In my life, I guess. So I'm like a kid who's like, whatever age. But I'm like a small kid who, now I want to give myself space to figure out what I like and just mess around. So I think I'm in the very early stages of that. So it's just whatever seems fun and interesting and that I'm drawn to.
100%. I agree completely with that too, because I'm the same. Like I discovered creativity later on in my life. Like I've always been interested. I've always read, but I was never like, oh, I could do it. And so now that I figured that out, I'm figuring that maybe I can do this. Maybe I can actually put some effort and getting the return of like feeling more like I'm discovering myself. I'm like trying to do different ones. So like and it's so interesting too, because like the more I would do different types of or different forms of creativity, the more I realized that like, oh, I can actually grasp, I can actually do more, you know, like for the longest time I wouldn't write, so now I'll write like blogs and like all these like long introspective blogs about life, about like the whatever journey I'm going through, kind of talking again to myself, like letters to myself, you know, and they would show me the kind of journey, because I would read back like a year later, I'm like, oh my god, I was really going through it, like you know, like I was not going through it in a bad way, but like, I was really like understanding and unraveling, you know, almost like, you know, I had all these ideas in my head that I wouldn't, you know, and I was kind of unraveling them. So like definitely I see that kind of as I grow through the creative journey, I'm seeing more and more ways for me to like show different self-expression. Like even now, like even like the jiu-jitsu I do is a way of self-expression, which is like so difficult to get your head around, you know, but like even physical, there's a physical way of expressing yourself, you know.
I think everything is like create, like I don't think people, for instance, I don't think I think someone who say is a lawyer or is even sales, like one of the things I did at the startup was sales, you're also being creative, because you're you know, you're entering a situation, you're reading a room, you're saying the right thing at the right time, you know, you're also kind of in this, you can be in this like state of whatever, like flow, where you're just, you know, connected. So I think everything that anything where it's like you're generating something.
You're creating something. It's in the name, right? You're creating something.
So I think everyone is creative, and everyone has to in some way be doing something creative so that they feel happy and healthy. You know, they might not be you know, an artist or whatever, or like a painter or a poet, but you know, either they're creative in their jobs, or they have things that they do on the side that they enjoy.
How do you think people can recognize that in their day-to-day life? Like you mentioned, like everything we do is creative, and like you could be doing something creative, we just not realize it, because I think most people, they're stuck in this idea in their head that only like artists do creative stuff, you know, like all these people I see on TV, they're the musicians. I'm not really a musician, I can't make music. And it's like, well, you can just make the music, you know, but it's difficult for people to get that in their head. How do you suggest people, maybe something you've learned in the artist way or something like that get over that?
I think it's have fun, like focus on doing what is fun to you, not what the right thing is. Don't think about, you know, this is how I should do it. To think about, this is what I want to try and what I want to mess around with, and this seems like fun and exciting. You know, it's like that inner child in you.
100%, because I see that for myself too. You mentioned inner child, and I think that's so true. It's like you see that version of you that would always want to do it. I think it's like getting rid of the opinions of other people. Like, you know, I've often talked about this with my friends too. It's like getting past the fear of sharing your work is getting past the fear of people's judgment of you. Because it's like you mentioned in one of your poems that you wrote recently about, I think it was the bird one, where you were talking about going south and going north, and I think at the end of the poem you said something here. I'm now making you remember your own poem, but I think at the end of it you were like I realized basically that I'll have to be okay with people laughing at me, or like be okay with the judgment of other people. I getting the poem terribly wrong, but the sentiment is that the sentiment was like getting past that kind of like letting yourself go and being free from the judgment of other people, and that's what the missing ingredient was for you to be able to express. You know, talk a little bit more about that idea of like people letting go of other people's judgment in order for them to fully be more creative. You know.
I think part of it is I think it's important to get to know yourself. Like to be able to not care what other people think, you have to have conviction in your own ideas, and then so you have to figure out what you think and what you believe in first. And I think that's done by doing things probably alone, for yourself. So like another part of the practical aspects of the artist way are two things. There's the morning pages and there's the artist dates. So like every week you take yourself out on a artist date and you go do something that's like for your inner child. It's like going to the movies, going for a walk, like whatever it is. So doing those kinds of things and learning more about yourself, what you like, what you don't like, and then you start to gain more confidence in what you believe in, and you get more. You're more in contact with what you actually believe in, because I think a lot of, if you and me were to, this is something I think about a lot, which is if you and me were to like have a conversation right now, and if you ask me like, do you believe everything happens for a reason? Do you believe like there's a path for you? Do you like a path for you? Do you believe that everything, like that good things will happen? Do you believe, or do you believe that, that creativity is everywhere and all these things, like, or whatever belief it is. We all have these beliefs that when we sit down and talk about them, and we think, we're like, yeah, I believe that. But then in your day-to-day life, you don't act as if you believe that at all. And I think bridging that gap is really important. And I think doing things like, being in contact with yourself and finding ways to express yourself help bridge that gap. Yeah.
I completely agree. I think it's like that for me was like, because I think whenever I go through a difficult time, that's what I have to remind myself. It's like kind of just take myself away from all that like obligations that I feel like I have to do, and kind of like bring myself back to those things that I just like doing, like visiting the poetry open mics and just going on walks. And it's always the simple stuff. It's always the stuff that like, that doesn't have any like extra things to it. It's like, oh yeah, just going to a poetry open mic, or just going for a walk in the park and just reading a book in the park,
listening to music,
just doing simple stuff that makes you like comfortable with just who you are. And I think it's interesting you call it artist dates, because I can see why, because it is, it's like you're treating yourself basically to these things.
Inner artist.
Yeah, you're inner artist, you're inner child, So one thing we've also wanted to talk about was the discipline that comes with being an artist. So you mentioned about like the artist dates, taking yourself on the dates and writing every day and making sure you do it top of the day. And if you don't do it at the beginning of the day, making sure you do it at the end of the day. Yeah. One of the things especially artists struggle with is that, how artists are, they're like, oh yeah, whatever, I just go with the flow, the universe tell me when to be creative, or like all of that stuff. But it's actually one important thing of being an artist is consistency and discipline. So talk to me, if you agree with that, talk to me about the idea of like discipline when it comes to creativity and when it comes to doing artistic stuff.
Well, I think that it's an important thing to, like, I currently do not, I don't make money from the art I have. So I think that's, or the art I do, I have no like pressure, like no one's telling me to do anything. I have no whether it's, I have no external obligations or pressures as a result of it. So I think that's probably really difficult to navigate, but I don't have to. What I guess is, it is difficult sometimes. It's difficult, like say, a practical example is this week I have a stand-up. I'm doing stand-up comedy.
Let's go.
Yeah. I'm doing it for the second time ever. The first time went horribly, but I'm very excited, and I've been writing this, obviously my set, and the process of writing that, it's interesting navigating how to do that, because at the same time that you're disciplined and you have to make sure that you're actually like, a lot of the gap is often like, I think for creative people especially, or people in general, you're like thinking about it, and you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about like,
Instead
I should do that, but you don't do it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big gap as well. But I also think, you have to be able to make something good, or something, in this case funny, you have to live that. It's like like a lot of, I remember I read someone said, I don't even know what author this was, but it said, I wanted to be a writer, but first I had to live.
Yeah. 100%.
So it's like, you can't just, these ideas don't like come in a vacuum. So come out of a vacuum. Like, you're not just going to sit somewhere and like, hard knuckle and figure it out. Like you have to, your life, how you live your life, that's your art. Like, and that's like, what you create is a reflection of how you live your life. 100%
agree. 100% agree.
So a lot of, I remember I was sitting in a McDonald's, because McDonald's is one of the few places where you can go and you can sit there for hours and just write, and they won't kick you out because no one gives a shit. It's not like a bougie, East London coffee shop where they want to get you in and out because they're charging £4 for every coffee. So I like to go to McDonald's to write. And I was just like, it just wasn't coming out. And then there was some girls who were, they'd walked into McDonald's and they were like dancing and messing around and having a good time. And I was like, I was like, okay, I need to like go dance with them. And I need to like go do like silly shit to be able to get in the headspace to even be able to come up with something that's good. I did sort of dance with them, and this is an interesting part where it's like, a lot of times the thing that you have to do to like express or like get to the place where you have something that's worth expressing is something where you're being, it has potential to embarrass you.
Yes.
So in this case, I didn't go directly to dance with them because I was embarrassed. But as I was leaving the McDonald's, I started dancing, and they were dancing, and they were over there as well. So we like made eye contact and danced, but I didn't fully go there and like dance with them. And I probably would have written something really funny, and I didn't do it. So
I think even the act of not doing it is also funny. Like, you thinking I'm going to do it, and then like, actually, no, I'm not going to do it. That's also funny.
And then I walked outside the McDonald's, and I was like, okay, I should go back in there and be like, and tell them I'm going to perform. I'm trying to do a stand-up comedy thing. Can I practice on you guys? And I didn't do it because I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
And that's why, until the day I do that, I'll never write anything good. I'm serious. But no, that kind of shit. It's like,
but no, you're 100%. I think you're right. I think what you're basically saying about like living the life before you can write about it is so true. That's a realization I made too, which changed my perspective of being just, because I think, because you said everyone's basically an artist or creative, but they don't know it. And what I struggled with at the beginning was I would try to write, but I had nothing to write about. No. You've not lived the life that you want to write about.
No.
So you need to actually go and live the life, and like that's what it's kind of like. It kind of feeds on each other, because the more you go out there, live the life, you do crazy stuff, you meet people, the more you have to write about, and you can share it with people, and they go, oh my god, that's cool, come to this thing that I'm doing. Then it just kind of compounds and compounds,
So it's actually, I remember what I've done, what's happened a few times is I would like I'd similarly like sit down and write, and then I'd get an idea for what I actually should be doing instead of trying to write something that's never gonna come out. Yeah.
So you mentioned writing stand-up and writing poetry. What are the similarities or differences between those two for you? Is there a difference? Do you just sit down and write and then this comes out as this? And
they're just different things in life. Like, right, poetry is for the moments, at least for me. I think some people write funny poems. I haven't written funny poems. Maybe I will, but poetry is like when I'm, cozy, when I'm like, I see like falling leaves.
You see the beauty in life.
Yeah, like,
you want like
for like gentle, soft moments. And comedy, the comedy stuff just born out of also stuff that you see, but like, the funny stuff, the interesting stuff, the stuff that makes you laugh. So they're just different moments in life. I think performing, for me, it's probably true that poetry is hard from like a vulnerability perspective if because you might be sharing something that's very personal to you.
Yeah.
Comedy is difficult because when you go to these poetry open mic things, everyone there is very supportive.
Yes.
Everyone there is very friendly.
Yes.
Like you'll be fine.
Yeah.
You'll read something. You'll be okay.
Yeah.
I think comedy has there's like no wrong at like a poetry open mic. There's definitely a wrong.
There's a not funny.
There's a not funny. There's people being like, what the fuck, and you very viscerally knowing that you're not doing it well.
That's so difficult to think about, man.
Yeah. So I think for that reason, comedy, right, to me, but I think it's subjective. It's subjective, right? Because someone might be. Some people are fine with that, and then the vulnerability stuff they really struggle with. So I think it's different. But yes, there's like you can there's a clear way of knowing if you've done well or wrong. Whereas like poetry, you might be better received, and you might be able to tell a vibe or whatever. But it's fine.
Talk to me about stand-up then. Let's shift a little bit. Talk to me about stand-up. What inspired you to start stand-up? What do you love about stand-up? Why do you do it?
I just have this drive right now to express myself. And I'm kind of just throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
I like stand-up because funny things happen in my life. And I think the ability to express those things and see how people receive it and just be on stage, and I think it's fun and exciting. And I think it makes my life more interesting because, instead of, it almost makes me more receptive to like, like that, something funny happened today. Like I'm gonna write about that. Or this situation happened. It's like, it makes you observe. And that's the same is true for like the morning pages. It makes you pay more attention to life, and it makes life more interesting.
Do you have any comedians that you like that you wanna?
I'll be honest with you. I am so like attention deficient.
You don't even watch
that like, and this it's true even for like poetry and like what I really enjoy going to watch going to like watch it in person, but like to sit down on my computer and watch it, I can sometimes do it, but rarely. So they're really good comedy open nights. That some of them are. There's one that's free that's really good in Angel. It's like the Bill Murray, and they have another pub where they do, and everyone there is really good, and it's very cool. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know that many. Yeah,
I mean, I love stand up. I love comedy. I always so I have this friend Mikey. I'm always telling him, shout out Mikey. I'm always telling him he should do comedy because like I think he's hilarious, just naturally funny. I just like being around funny people. I think life is just so much more enjoyable with people who can notice a thing and then point it out in the most hilarious way.
Yeah,
it makes you see that thing too, because like I'll just be going back and forth with him, like, yeah, that's so funny, and it's like you're sharing an inside joke, but it's like the whole world, because people are just hilarious. People just do the most funniest stuff if you're just willing to see it.
Yeah,
if you're willing to look at it properly, and it's like. Yeah, no, I think it's so I think it's so much takes so much confidence to actually go up there on that stage, like you're mentioning, to perform it, because you are right. The comedy audiences are cutthroat. They don't care. They just want to be, and it's like comedy is almost subjective, but not really in their eyes. You know, it's like there is something that you can say that's funny and something you can say that's not funny, but almost like you also have to test that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that been like, going on stage and testing something out that you think is funny, but like you don't know if they think it's funny?
I haven't done it enough to be able to give you a response on that, but I definitely think it's like I was talking about someone last night. It's like there are so many different ways that you can tell a story, and you know, whether it's what thing you focus on, or even how you like pronounce, you know, the last word. Do you pause beforehand? Do you you know, there's so many different ways that you can do it. And that it's, I think a lot of comics, especially big comics, they're just, you know, they have a lot of sets. They might even be making the same jokes, you know, throughout their sets, but they're changing slight things, to find what works. But yeah, I haven't done it enough to be able to speak to that.
Could you say what the process is like to go from seeing bunch of girls at McDonald's doing some funny stuff? You go, okay, how do I take this and turn it into a joke that I can perform on stage? What is that like? What's the step in your mind, in your way?
Yeah. It's more like you have to get into the headspace, a creative headspace, where it's like that's just gonna it's just gonna come to you. So I'm not actually writing about, like, when I with the McDonald's thing, I'm not actually writing about, like, my plan wasn't to have a funny situation with these people and then write about it. My plan was to have fun, like have fun with them, like, and get myself in that like mindset, and then in that mindset I knew I would write something but good. But it was specific to what I was writing about, which is not the people, or it has nothing to do with that situation that just happened. Cool. Yeah, so it's about getting into a certain headspace where it's like where creating something is like inevitable because you're just in that space.
It's almost like the importance of play in creativity. Yeah. It's like we mentioned earlier, like that inner child. It's like getting yourself to get into position even as an adult where you can bring that feeling out.
For sure. And
then using that as a kind of a conduit to create something, because like that's probably when you're going to be at your most open and you're most like able to connect to a feeling within you. Because I feel like sometimes we kind of shut that down because we want to be more structured and, you know, kind of an adult, you know, but it's like, no, you actually need to like discover that playfulness that you had as a child to make anything that's worth.
Yeah, you have to not think about, you just have to be exactly playful. And it's actually super hard to be playful, to learn to be playful if you're not used to it. So, you know, some people have been fucking around since they were 15. Like I was watching a video of Tyler, the creator, when he was like performing at his like middle school probably talent show, and he was like, you know, dancing, fucking around. And I was just like, well, yeah, obviously, you know, because he's just been fucking around for ages, and he's comfortable in that space, and he's comfortable in himself, and that's just what, you know. What he does, yeah. But for us people who are for anyone who's trying to, wherever you're starting from, getting good at being playful is surprisingly hard, and you like avoid doing it. Like artist dates are actually I think the thing that I think most people have the hardest time with. Like I find it harder to keep the artist date than to do the morning pages, because I'll get caught up in like, no, you know, I should probably do this other thing that's like more serious or whatever. It's like you just won't be kind to yourself and generous with yourself, and you find it hard to like give yourself an hour in a week, which is kind of crazy when you think about it.
You give like how many hours to
how many hours? Yeah, exactly.
I also think about how the other stuff that we do in our life contribute to creativity. So for me, for example, right, one of the ways I stay disciplined with everything I do, with the podcast, with poetry, is because I kind of look at it from the same lens I look at my jiu-jitsu training. It's like I go training, and it's like I do it regularly because I know that if I stop doing it, I'm gonna feel not great about myself, but also like when I go back, I'm gonna not be as good. And so like I look at it this way, and I want to hear what you think about this, right? That I look at creativity almost the same way that I look at training, because it's almost like the more I do it, and this is obvious, the more I do it, the better I get at it. Yeah. But the more I do it, the more I want to do it. Because if I have a way where I'm like, oh, actually, it's like performing. Like I stopped performing for like 2 months because I was doing whatever, you know, and it's like I want to perform. But that feeling of wanting to perform, when I'm there, there's more anxiety with it because I haven't performed for 2 months. But if I was doing it last week, there is no time for me to think, you know. Of course I'm going to be nervous, but it's like that nerves is kind of like is put down because I know that it's just now I'm nervous. When I'm on stage, I'll be okay. Reminding myself of that is harder the longer I leave it. So like I kind of use that, you know, that mental process. You preempt that. Yeah. Okay. I preempt it by just saying, oh, like it's like going to jiu-jitsu. It's like, it's fine. You're just going training. It's like, that's for me, I kind of phrase it in that perspective. Okay. So when you're going to like perform, you're like, oh, this is just another rep. Like exactly. It's reps for me because if I obviously when I'm up there and performing something vulnerable, it's different from a rep, but it's, to me, it's like that. Yeah. Do you see that? Do you see? I get that. Yeah. I think I've at points, it's like, with all this, how you see things, like the way that you frame things for yourself, it's like you have to find whatever frame or way of thinking about it works for you to actually enable the outcome that you want. You know what I mean? So sometimes I'll tell myself, oh, like what you have to do is kind of surrender and listen and pay attention to life, and then that'll tell you what to do, because that's kind of what I need in that moment. But then sometimes I'm like, no, I have to create. Like I have to actively create, and you're like flipping how you think, and in the same way that absolutely, it's like you have to find, because your thinking is like, well, if it feels like a rep, then it kind of takes the pressure off as well. It's like, this is just a, you know, maybe thing I'm doing. 100%. And I think it also kind of, it happens most when I'm in a creative block, you know, like whenever I feel like creatively, I'm not like, I don't know what to write. Like I want to write, but there's nothing coming up. And so it's like, if I kind of put myself in a position where I have to do it, for example, every week I have to put out a little poem that I put on my story. And because it's just a poem from my story, it's not that deep in my mind.
Yeah.
But it's coming from a place of truth and actual, like, this is something I feel. So it kind of gets over that creative block. And I wanted to talk about this also, like how people get through creative blocks, because in every journey you're gonna have moments where you're gonna be just creating, just everything will just feel like so easy. But then you will get to a point where, whether it's in stand-up or whether it's in poetry, just even anything, writing, you reach a point where you kind of feel like you've said it all, and you don't, like, you're not, maybe your life currently is not allowing you to come with an idea that's new. And I've definitely felt this in my life too, where I'll be doing things and I'll be like, you know what, it's easier to do the podcast than it is to go write a poem, because it just feels like right now writing a poem is too much, because I don't know what I would say, you know. But to get through that, for me especially, is always about kind of what you mentioned too, kind of seeing the beauty in the world, kind of like letting myself go from all the obligations and kind of going for a walk in the park, kind of resetting my nervous system and being like, you know what, just bring everything down. What was a simple thing you can notice and just talk about? And then that kind of like spirals into something that I want to write about. But it's also kind of like, I think sometimes in our heads we get too caught up in our heads about fear and resistance, you know. There's that element of resistance that comes with it too. That I'm going to share this, and so if I'm going to share this, I want to say something that people will see and be like, oh, this is good, or people will like be able to receive, you know. And I'm thinking about the audience receiving the art rather than me producing the art. So I have to kind of get past that, block out the audience out of my mind, so I can create something that's true to me, or is actual self-expression, so that I'm not caught up in what they're trying to, you know. And then that kind of helps me too. What are some of the ways do you think people can get past creative blocks? Have you experienced some yourself?
I think it goes back to, you know, when you're experiencing creative blocks, you're probably trying too hard to get something done, and what you have to do is play more, and going back to like make you know, your life is your art. You know, go do fun shit.
Go do fun shit. Go outside.
Yeah, exactly. Like probably this whole thought process is happening, and you're like sitting in your like, or I'm not saying you, like it happens to me a lot, where it's like you're thinking about, you're just thinking. You're like sitting in your bed, you're sitting wherever, you're just thinking. And it's really important to also like break things into small things, and like start small. Like start, you know, in the morning. You know, it's like if all you feel like you can do today is like go and, I don't know, you know,
go for a walk in the park or something like that.
Literally just go for a walk.
Yeah.
Then
do that and then see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to, you're not gonna solve this whatever problem you have from the level of consciousness that you're at. Right? So
no, that's perfect. It makes perfect sense.
When I used to do sales, one of the things that I would do is basically stalk people on LinkedIn, because you have to like, then you were going to call them or you're going to email them, so you had to like look through their
the post,
their life and see something that might be relevant, so that they open the email or whatever. And I remember one guy on his LinkedIn had in his, and it really stuck with me, in his like bio, it was like a quote from Einstein that said, you know, problems can't be solved from the same level of consciousness as when they are created, as from which they're created. So it's like, to solve a problem, it's like you have to change, you have to elevate your state of consciousness, and you know, going for a walk in a park, you know, meditating, whatever, you know, whatever gets you there. But
that's beautiful. That's so true too, and that's so beautiful. I think also one thing I wanted to talk about also was finding that creative voice, whatever that means for individuals. What some of the ways that people can find a creative voice. And what I mean by that essentially is that obviously when we start anything creative, whether it's poetry, we're drawn by inspirations. So you read someone, you get inspired by them, you think, oh, this is good, I like this. You know, I do the same thing. If you spoke about it too, just like take that line here, oh, this is good. But we get caught up in that, and when we want to do our own thing, it's hard to find our own voice through that. I think stealing like a great artist is one of the ways we do it.
Yeah.
But what are some of the other ways that people can find their voice?
Just do it. Like, but you're probably not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, right?
whatever it is, you're probably not doing it. It's like you're thinking about how to find your voice.
But yes, exactly. Yeah, 100% true.
It's like, just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. Because I'm thinking back to, the reason I'm laughing, because I'm thinking back to when I was in that state, or trying to find my creative voice.
Yeah, it's like, what's my voice?
What's my voice? What's unique about me? It's like, you just do the thing, and then the thing will manifest itself.
Yeah, and you'll, because you can't know beforehand.
Yeah.
You just can't.
You just can't know. Yeah, you have to just do
it's like
it.
you're not gonna,
Yeah, yeah. And finally, okay, I wanted to talk about the kind of like the negative aspects of creativity. Like obviously like the rejection and like for example, if you've ever, I don't know if you've ever had this, but you say like the poetry crowd is very nice, but sometimes I've performed stuff and they do get a good reaction, but sometimes perform stuff and it's like not the reaction you want. You probably had this stand up more like you mentioned before, but how do people deal with rejection when it comes to creativity? Or maybe you share your work with someone and they're like, oh, that's okay. You're like, man, that was more than okay. I thought you were going to be so happy to see this, but I think in any journey you're going to find people who like your work and people who just don't care for it.
Yeah.
How do people get view that kind of rejection in the right way so that they can keep going? Because one thing about creativity, you can't give up, but most people give up at the first hurdle.
I don't think like I said, I'm very early in my like creative journey. I don't think I've had that happen to me enough where I can really give that much advice about it. What I think is true is like, just like a lot of it comes down to just being kind to yourself. And it's like, if you had a shit, whatever, just like whatever makes you feel nice after, like, go hang out with your friends, go for a walk, watch a movie, maybe take a, don't immediately like force yourself. Like if I had like I remember when I did the stand-up thing, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to do another stand-up next week because I feel like I have to like recover from that a little bit. Like it would have just been painful to like really force myself to do it again. Yeah, like that's not fun either.
Yeah.
Just be kind to yourself, and I think the really important thing is, I guess, when you're, and again, I haven't dealt with this, so it's easy for me to say it, but I haven't like really been faced with the challenge of it, where it's like people criticize you or people just don't like your stuff. It's like you get a lot more, like what you're getting out of it is not the fact that people are liking it or not. Like you're having fun, but again, I haven't experienced this, so I'm just saying like this is what I would tell myself.
No, but it's true.
Will tell myself when it happens.
I think it's true. I think it's just remembering why you're doing it.
Yeah,
doing it for fun.
Yeah, you're doing it for fun, and I think you have to not. You can't care what people think, because that's not the guide. Like if you're not, that's not the voice, like whatever it is that's telling you what to do or what to pursue or what's funny or whatever. That's not, it's not other people.
Okay, and fine. Do you think about success when you have these ideas about creativity? Do you think about the day where you're on stage with thousands of people and performing great poetry and stand up and doing everything that your heart's content? How do you view success and creativity?
Yeah, I do. Obviously, I think about success, and I hate that I do. I think it's actually a like it's a delusion a little bit. And I try to rid myself of that delusion as much as possible, because I think it stands in the way of doing stuff. It's like you'll be like, this is really embarrassing, but you know, whatever. But like sometimes when you're doing stuff, it's like if while you're doing something, whether it's like painting, writing, or something, you're thinking about like, oh, you know, this is like, you know, this is gonna be great.
Yeah, this is so good. I can't wait for people to.
And it's just like, that's just like, bruh, like you're not gonna make anything good like that. And so I do think about it, and I try.
But there is a balance, right? Like I want to talk about this actually. I'm not push back, but I want to present the other side, I guess. There is a balance between you wanting to share something with people because you want them to see it and relate to it.
Yeah.
And the more people see it, the more group of, like, that's more of it, right? But that's also success in a way. You know?
Yeah. So, you know, the reason I have a drive to like, or why I want to express, is because that's what I want to see more of in the world.
Exactly.
And I want, you know, even in my day to day, I want to make people happy and smile, and that makes me happy. And that's just and I think it's very lacking in the average person. Like this, everyone is kind of like, everyone's pretending to be normal, and they're really ashamed of themselves, or ashamed of the thing that is actually special about themselves. And I really don't like that. It's true, and I think that's true for me, and like, it's true for me internally, and it's true. So I just as much as I want myself to, you know, express myself, and to not think about what other people are thinking and do that, I want that for other people as well. And that's what I want to like bring to the world or whatever. So I think that's a good way to think about it. And yeah, but like to think about like whether it's success, fame, money, like I think a lot of people are actually like, being famous doesn't seem fun. Yeah,
it doesn't. Right.
Also having the pressures of, you know, being an artist, and sort of having to conform to what people expect of you. You know, when you're, I even see it with like some relatively famous artists, where it's like people only they know you for like whatever you're like, if you're drawing and you're drawing like faces in a certain way, it's like, and that's what they want you to do, and to have to like deal with that and conform to that, that doesn't seem that fun. Seems either. Yeah. So I think my ideal is like being able to follow my interests and my passions, and then, you know, being able to like have food on the table, and, you know, that's it.
That's beautiful, and I completely agree with you. And like, I was clicking when you said the thing about people not understanding that they're not, like, there is beauty in every single person, but they do think they're normal. And it's like they have this idea that if they act normal, then they can just get by, and it's like they'll be okay. And it's like internally we have, I feel like, especially our generation, or just not even just people, right? They have this war within them that they're being forced to do one thing, but they actually want to do another. They want to express themselves in another way. And I get this a lot, where people will be like, "Oh man, you said something that I was thinking internally for the longest time, and I can relate to it." And it's like, yeah, of course, because everyone has the same experience. Yeah. Everyone is going through similar things. And when they see an artist do that, they feel that kind of like familiarity with the artist, because they feel like, oh, you can do that and I can't, and it's like, no, you can also do it too. And I think the more people that do it, the more we save, whatever that means, the more we kind of like help each other, because like everyone is going through this like and there is an artist for each individual person who will say the exact same thing. You have to, be able to put their hand on that feeling that they have. And I think that's what the final question I was going to ask you too was like, that's what the meaning of life is. To me, that's what we're all here to do, because the meaning of life is such a big topic. It's like, oh man, why are we here? What's the point of us? What's the point of this human journey, human experience? But for me, it's like being able to share that kind of community where we can all kind of have that conversation with each other. Like that's why I lean into podcast, because I'm like just talking to people and having that familiarity to where you can talk to and then have that kind of like, oh, I do that too, I think like that too, and showing other people that pushes that perspective on people, and I think that's what I'm trying to show. And then poetry is a way for me to express myself while I do that. But yeah, for you, what would you say
the meaning of life?
I always ask people this question. They hate it. Everyone hates this question, but it's something I always, especially when the first time you come on a podcast, I always like to ask people, what is the meaning of life, Mateo? What, in your experience, what answers have you gained? And please share with the rest of us. Yes, I know, but I guess it's fine.
I think it has this, well, not, but what makes life worth it, or it definitely, I relate to what you say about other people and connecting with other people, and connecting with yourself, and doing that through self-expression, also through sharing vulnerability, through giving, and I don't know.
I think a lot of what you said before was basically that. I think that's where the question came from. When you were mentioning about feeling like that's connecting to people and like sharing, and I think you do it through the things that you do. The fact that you try to make people laugh, that's also an answer there. The fact that you do poetry to express yourself, even though you understand that like the vulnerability in that is difficult, but it's not about, it's about me, but it's not about me. It's about me showing that I can do this. And showing other people that it's actually possible to be this version of myself. You can be an honest version of myself. And I think basically that's what that book encapsulates almost,
but I also think there's a lot of reasons why you do things. Like going back to like, there's a lot, like there's also, I think it's at an individual level, there's a need to like what we're saying, like create or express yourself, and but it's also sharing that with other people is a big part of it. And seeing that in other people is a big part of it, and truly seeing and getting to know other people, and I think that's also something which I think is important in a, and I've seen for myself in terms of figuring it, like as part of getting to know yourself and like living a life that more aligns with with yourself. I think one of the first steps is having that alone time and that time for self-expression, and then it's like, for example, to this poetry thing, I went alone, but then I went where I wanted to go, and then I met other people that are interested in that thing. And that's just, you have to be comfortable being alone, at least for a little bit, but then hopefully, and I think you'll find people who sort of you can connect with, and you have these shared interests and these shared things that, like, the ultimate goal isn't to be alone. It's not like
100%.
There's a like, you still need alone time, like, but it's an important balance.
Yeah, it's to find your tribe, almost find your community, the people that understand you. Yeah.
Because relating to those people and sharing with those people and being inspired by those people, that's way, you don't do it alone. Nothing comes in a vacuum. It's like, even when you're alone, you're like reading someone, or you're reading a book, or you're seeing images, or you're watching a movie that's
created by someone else. Yeah. 100%. And on that note, thank you so much for doing this. This has been amazing.
How long have we been talking for?
An hour and probably an hour and 15 minutes, probably now that.
Cool.
But yeah, thank you so much for doing this. I really enjoy this. I look forward to your journey. I look forward to seeing you hopefully one day stand up. I look forward to seeing you next time perform her poetry.
Yeah, yeah.
One of those, yeah. But yeah, 100%, bro. Thank you so much for doing this, man. It's been a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed it.
I had a really, really good time. I really appreciate it. It's been lovely.
And on that note, thank you so much, guys. Take care. Bye.